This night took place about 3 years ago this month. I was 21 years old at the time of the story, and I still lived with my parents. My parents, grandparents, and siblings had gone out of town to visit my grandpa's hunting preserve 4 hours away. As much as I wanted to go with them, I decided to stay back and get some work done. I'm a full-time content creator, and I'm blessed to be able to have this be my full-time gig. As much as I enjoy some time alone, I still get terrified about being home alone. Childhood fear is still plaguing me to this day. To make my already growing anxiety worse, it began to rain. I always jumped whenever I heard the roaring of thunder. I was sitting in my living room watching YouTube videos while editing my video when I heard a quiet knock on the front door. It was past 11 p.m. and definitely too late to be having someone knocking on my front door. I walk over to the front door to look through the peephole. I can see a younger woman. She's about my age, petite, wearing a black skimpy dress with heels, and she's soaked. Through the door, I ask her what she needs. She replies her car broke down on the way to the club, and she tried to fix it herself, but couldn't figure it out. I asked her if she needed me to call someone for her, but she didn't reply. I asked her once more, and she asked if I could open the front door and let her in, completely disregarding my question. I told her it was best she wait outside while I called for a tow truck, but she insisted I open the front door so that she could get out of the rain. I told her it was best she wait outside for when the tow truck driver arrived. She mentioned she knew who I was and that she was a huge fan of my content. Not at all flattered and completely freaked out, I thanked her for her support, but told her I couldn't let her in. After talking to a tow company, I was quoted about 45 minutes. I told the woman through the door it was best she wait in her car for the tow truck driver. She insisted I open the front door and hang out with her while she waited. My testosterone got the better of me, and I decided to crack the door open ever so slightly to get a better look at her. I can't explain how grateful I am for my dad installing a chain lock on her front door. I opened the door with the chain lock still intact, took a look at her, and I will admit she was gorgeous. She smiled at me and I stepped closer to the door. Her smile began to fade as confusion overcame my body. To my surprise, she stepped off to the side, and I was met with the disturbing sight of a man dressed completely in black and wearing a scream mask. I mentioned he was a man simply due to his build and deep voice. The man managed to reach in through the crack of the door and try to reach for me. I stumbled back in terror as the man tried to break the chain lock off the front door. Through the sound of my heart racing in my ears, I could hear the man grunting and cursing under his breath as the woman kept urging him to hurry up and that there wasn't much time. I could hear the wood from the frame of the door begin to splinter more and more as the man kept ramming his shoulder into the door. I'm not big or strong at all. I'm scrawny and only 5'6". There was no way I'd be able to fight this guy off if he managed to break in. I armed myself with the bat my dad kept under the couch for protection, and took 4 solid strikes to the man's arm, shoulder, and head. It worked because he no longer tried to break in, and both he and the woman ran off my property and into a dark-colored sedan. They sped away as the tow truck driver approached my house. When I tell you I ran out of my house and into this man's arms, I'm not lying. I was genuinely in fear for my life. He called the police and they showed up within minutes. This story has a lucky ending, however. The couple was later arrested attempting to break into another home. This was all a trap. The woman would lure unsuspecting victims out of their house and distract them long enough to allow her accomplice to approach the homeowner and threaten them with a gun. Then they would tie the homeowner up and rob them of their valuables. This man tried to kidnap the daughter of one of his previous victims. Luckily, the girl managed to break free and the man ran off and sped away in that same sedan. The woman ended up pleading guilty to armed robbery, while the man pleaded guilty to charges, which include armed robbery, felon with the possession of an illegal firearm, kidnapping, and a list of other charges. I'm both grateful and terrified to have been home that night and stopped a possible robbery, kidnapping, or both. I'm a longtime lover of anything horror or spooky, and have always been terrified of ghosts and demons. This night I learned that the only thing more terrifying than the boogeyman or Freddy Krueger is humankind itself. I had been home alone this night. My husband had gone out with a few of his buddies and wouldn't be home until late. It was pouring rain this night and the sun set early. It was dark at 5 o'clock this night, and I figured it was the perfect night to watch my favorite horror movie, The Conjuring. My husband and I shared an equal love for all things horror, and we had a room dedicated to our collection of horror posters and collectibles. We had set up a TV in our horror room so that we could watch our favorite movies in there. The movie had ended and I decided to head over to bed. It was only 10 o'clock and my husband still wouldn't be home for another 3 or 4 hours, and I chose to fall asleep instead of waiting up for him. I'm suddenly awoken by a notification from the doorbell camera on my front door. I picked my phone up, and through heavy eyes I could see a figure standing at my front door. The house is eerily quiet, and I can hear the knocks coming from the front door. I can see the man through my doorbell camera, and he doesn't seem to want to give up at all, and proceeds to stand by the front door, still. I activate the microphone feature on the app and ask him if I could help him. The man looks directly into the camera and covers the lens with his hand. I tell him that I will be calling the police and that it's best he leaves now. Before I can even repeat myself, I can hear a window being smashed and all of the little pieces of glass hitting the floor. I let out a shriek of terror and proceed to cover my face with my blanket like a frightened 4-year-old. My blood runs cold when I hear the commotion of what can assume to be the man climbing in through the window. His heavy boots hit the floor, and I pick up the phone to dial 911. You never know how disturbing the phrase, 911, what is your emergency, is until you have to dial it for yourself and listen to those unfamiliar words. In a hushed tone, I let the operator know that someone had broken into my house, and I'm in the bedroom furthest from the entrance to my home. After getting some basic information, the operator informs me officers are on their way and to stay on the phone with her. I can't find words and stay silent on the phone. The intruder's steps are heavy and pound into the wooden flooring. Each step gets heavier and louder as they approach my room. I begin to sob as the steps get closer to the bedroom door, and I scream again that the police are on their way. The door handle begins to shake as the man tries to enter the bedroom, and begins to shake violently as he becomes frustrated. He begins to slam his fist on the door, and manages to splinter the door as he transitions from pounding with his fist to kicking with those heavy boots. Still on the line, the operator instructs me to stay calm and to grab something to use as a weapon if he were to break in. Suddenly, the house is silent again, except for the sound of the intruder's heavy breathing. At this point, I'm frozen in fear and can't move or act or say anything. I'm defeated. I muster up the courage to tell the man to take anything he wanted and to leave. For the first time through the entire ordeal, the man speaks. You're lucky you're behind this locked door. I would have made you the next missing person, bitch. Those words still haunt me to this day. The intruder could be heard walking away, and the front door open and close. I could do nothing but cry and scream in relief. I get a notification on my phone from the doorbell camera again to notify me that someone was at my front door, but it was only the man walking out through the front door. About 10 minutes had passed, and police arrived, followed only minutes later by my husband. The police officers announced themselves and walked into the house looking for me. My husband walked in after them and called for me, and I ran out of the bedroom. Before I could completely walk past the entrance of the bedroom, I slipped. My husband and I waited outside with 2 officers while the others searched our home. The officers found a trail of blood leading from the window the intruder broke in through, but they also found, or should I say didn't find, the butcher's knife my husband kept in our kitchen. Like stereotypical horror stories go, this man hasn't been caught and is still at large. Police collected DNA from the scene, and it turns out this man doesn't have a criminal record. Police also reviewed the video from our doorbell camera, but can't get a good picture of the man's face due to the video quality being so poor and grainy. Regardless, his DNA has been collected and is stored away. It's unfortunate he will have to commit another crime in order for him to hopefully be caught. Driving home after a terrible day at work has always been peaceful for me. Knowing I'm only a 40-minute drive away from escaping my reality, an awful job brings me even greater peace. The night only got better because I'd be driving in the rain. Contrary to popular belief, I actually enjoy driving in the rain. It adds to the melancholy effect derived from my depressed existence. This night, I had stayed behind later at work to get some extra tasks done. This weekend would be a 3-day weekend, and I didn't want to be stuck working on a day I could be sleeping in instead. I packed up all of my belongings and locked the office up. It was about 8:30 p.m. at this point, and I couldn't wait to get home. Exhausted after a 14-hour day, I decided to take the shorter route home, which would lead me through a road I didn't know well. Even though I would be cutting my driving time by 15 to 20 minutes, I was horrified about driving down this road. It's one of those roads that twists and turn and have high drop-offs if you ever veer off the road. It's a complete death trap. It also doesn't help that you get zero reception on this road and it's extremely isolated. I was about 20 minutes into my drive, making it past all of the initial sharp turns, and only had 5 minutes left before getting on the main road back to my house when I saw something blocking the road up ahead. I'm forced to make a full stop when I noticed a car was blocking the entire right lane and part of the left lane. I couldn't get around this car without basically having to go off-roading. I paused for a moment or so, contemplating the best option. Feeling overwhelming guilt and deciding to be a decent human being, I chose to grab my flashlight and walk out to see if the person needed help. I opened my car door and can immediately smell smoke. I assume the car must have broken down. I make my presence known, disregarding my headlights being a dead giveaway, and let whoever know that I'm here for any assistance. No one responds, but instead of just leaving, I decide to walk towards the car. I'm startled when I see a woman sitting in the driver's seat. We lock eyes and she immediately opens the car door and lets me know that her car broke down and is in need of help. I'm a bit taken back since I called it a couple times and she didn't say anything back. I chalked it up to her being anxious and afraid of being out on her own. She began to ask me if I could help her check under the hood to see what the problem might be. I told her I'm not the best with cars and it's best I drive her into town where the reception is better. She kept insisting I take a look under the hood and try to figure out the problem. At this point I was starting to get a bad feeling and I wasn't feeling comfortable. My gut was telling me she was up to no good and she kept insisting I look under her hood. I told her I'd be right back and I was going to check if I had my tools in the trunk of my car. She didn't respond. Instead she looked off to the side and started biting her fingernails. Not wanting to give her the idea I was about to bail, I walked about 2/3 of the way to the car, but the other third, I ran for my life. I put my car in drive and sped off as fast as I could. The woman began to scream at me and curse at me, but I didn't care. I had to get myself to safety. As I drove off, I could see the woman in the side rear mirror waving her arms in frustration and screaming. Her crazy ass wasn't the worst of it. Two very large men stood up from crouching behind the bushes closest to her car. My car isn't the fastest or in the best shape, but I put my foot down on the gas, risking potential harm to my engine. The rest of the ride home I kept checking in the rearview mirror to make sure I wasn't being followed. Luckily, nothing else happened after that. The rest of the night, I laid in bed thanking God that I listened to my gut and left when I did. The woman was trying to set me up and use her car as a distraction before attacking her victims. I'm glad I made it out safely, and I hope no one else fell for their trap.